Let's kick off this discussion about the World Series. It goes to the Dodgers. Ultimately, the team that everybody thought would win ends up winning in the end, and really
Actually, hold on. I want to
comfortably.
correct that statement. I want to correct that statement.
Okay.
I don't think we thought they would win. We thought they should win on paper.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
I don't think we thought they would win. Honestly, I thought the Phillies were more of a favorite than the Dodgers.
That's
Um,
correct in saying. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, preseason wise, you look at that roster. Otani comes in, obviously, will make any team a contender, probably the biggest contender, and we got what we thought. They did it in ways sometimes that were a little different. Maybe their pitching got really obliterated throughout the year, but they were able to hold together. And that'll be
Oh,
a
boo
talking point in
hoo,
this one. Here we go again
boo
with John doesn't
hoo.
care about the Dodgers injuries. But I think
When you
I
can buy anyone you want, I don't
so can
care
the
about your
Yankees,
injuries.
so can the Yankees, and they didn't win. So
That's their problem.
and the Yankees have a interesting offseason coming up. That'll be for another episode. But I think this first game I think the first and fifth game are, for obvious reasons, big talking points of this series. I think game one, Freddie Freeman hits the walk-off grand slam. We've questioned Aaron Boone for a while. A lot of fans have. We've questioned him this year even. He got him to the World Series, but um, he brings in Nestor Cortez to try to keep the game going and close out the game and excuse me, already starting with the coughing issues. But I mean, that move backfires pretty quickly. Freddie absolutely nukes one. I mean, he comes in for Otani, gives him a meatball right down the plate, but Otani pops it up. He does the same thing to Freeman, literally right down the middle, and he absolutely nukes it. Like, what are your thoughts there for like the Yankees? It seemed like a really strange decision.
You do not bring in a pitcher in that key of a situation who has not pitched in a month. I know Boone had no regrets, at least in the Cortez side of it, with his decision. But when you have two lefties up in the bullpen and you're going to go with the one that did not pitch September 19th in that situation, you are asking for trouble. Those are the types of moves that when they happen in the moment, you're either like, this is going to be this is going to work out and you're going to be a genius, or it's going to fail and you're an absolute moron. Well, guess what, Aaron Boone? You're an absolute moron for this move. Now, I'm not going to say that Boone is the reason they lost the series. There is much more than just that going on. Heck, you got Freddie Freeman hitting this walk-off here as well as having a series of his life, and with not only coming off the ankle injury, but also having a broken rib, apparently,
I
that
love it.
the Yankees did absolutely nothing. And absolutely clearly, the Dodgers wanted it more as everyone stepped up, especially when Otani got hurt after basically at the end of game two with that slide and was nothing for the last three games.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a game that the Dodgers really emptied the tank here a little bit. They did use a lot of assets in this
Oh,
game.
yeah, in game five,
Yeah,
especially.
but hey, it comes out in the end. And again, I just feel like that move, putting Cortez in, was not the play there. And really, I mean, it was evident in this game as well as it was the whole series. The Yankees' offense was just slumpy. And look, this is a team that had relied on the long ball a lot, but they just were not really getting contributions from parts of the lineup they needed to. And in the end, they just, didn't put up a strong series, especially in that game two and three. I mean, they made it interesting late, but they really slowed down. So, John, I'll pose this question to you. I think coming into this series, we had given the Yankees the edge in starting pitching if you looked at both sides, and it was really the Dodgers pitching, which was the story here. Was it more the Dodgers pitching being great? Because I mean, Yamamoto in game two was amazing, or was it the Yankees just struggling at the plate?
I excuse me. Wow. Okay.
Welcome to
Got
the show.
the yeah. I'm getting
There cannot be two of you at the same time having this
getting
issue. Come
getting
on now,
choked up
lock
over
it in.
here. Getting choked up over here about the poor Yankees. honestly, when it comes down to this, I think that just the Yankees hitting, it didn't look. The game two was a what, 11-0, 11 to what
Game
was the score? Game two?
game
4-2.
4-2. Game 4, the Yankees won
Sorry,
11-4.
there was a blowout from the Dodgers, wasn't there?
No,
No.
you're thinking of the last series.
Uh,
Get your head out of the gutter.
I'm sorry.
Wrong New
Oh,
York
God.
team.
I'll give you a pass because this was a pretty forgettable series, honestly, for the first couple games. It was
Well,
I
the
was
first game and the last game were interesting. Everything else in the middle was fluff.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like the first game was great. The drama built up on that walk-off situation obviously was fantastic, but as I kind of already
Well, I mean,
alluded
just
to,
look at. I think that I really think that the final scores really say it all. It's pretty hard to beat a team when you give up, 7 runs and 6 runs in 2 key games. That being game one and obviously game.
Well,
Game
game one, that's
five.
a little unfair on game one's part, just because it was 9 innings, a 3-run ball, and then the 10th inning was poor situational putting players in spots.
yeah.
Okay, they still give up those runs though. I mean, fine. All right, we'll give them game one, but at the same time, when you give up 4 runs, and 6 runs, that's not necessarily a recipe for success. Let's put it that way.
But that
And
worked all the
honestly,
other
the
rounds.
Dodgers, yeah, but the Dodgers, in my opinion, you know, they had key situational hitting.
Yep.
Whereas the Yankees really, I feel like
You were correct
I
on
go
that.
back to the last 2 runs of the series. The Dodgers scored on 2 fly balls. So to me, that's key situational hitting where all right, we got bases loaded. I don't need to hit a home run here. I just need to get the ball out of the infield.
I mean, the Dodgers win game 2 hitting only home runs, right? I mean, they have Edmund home run in the second inning. They have a 2-run shot by Hernandez in the third, and then they have another solo shot by Freeman. And we had talked about these teams coming in. They were tops in the league in home runs, and that's not a surprise. You see who's on the roster. And it was kind of the thing, like at some point, sometimes these teams, kind of die by the long ball, and it just felt like the Yankees fell victim to that. Judge really never got out of his slump this postseason. He picked it up a little bit in game 4 and game 5, but was absent in the first couple games. I mean, Stanton continued to play well. Soto was getting on base a lot, doing his thing, but it just felt like I don't want to say that the Yankees all the time relied on Judge, throughout the year for every game, but you knew obviously when the playoffs come around, he's gonna have to step up, and he just didn't. And eventually, they do fall victim, and it just felt like this series really, like the games outside of game 4, the games are close. It's a 3-run game, a 2-run game, a 2-run game, but the games, as Will said, it was a lot of fluff. There wasn't much happening in those games. I mean, the Yankees get late runs, but it just was not great. And as you said, I mean, can we talk like Freddie Freeman? There's really a lot of guys in the league that are just so hard to hate. Freeman is easily at the top of that list. As a Phillies fan, I hope you have the same sentiment, Will.
I have a lot of respect for Freddie Freeman.
I mean, I think I was telling you guys this. I can't remember. I was telling somebody, but Fox did a piece about Freeman. I think it was Fox about how, he lost his mom to cancer when he was really young. And then when he was 12, he had to, get his dad to the hospital because he was having a medical emergency. And they were like, if he didn't get to the hospital, like your dad would have died. And like he was 12 years old. Like he's had a lot of adversity in his life. I know his son had a medical diagnosis. I don't remember exactly what it was, but this guy has been through so much in his life and a lot of adversity, even in this postseason with the injuries that we're hearing about, that we knew about, and now that we're hearing about. And just a great guy, and he was just, I mean, amazing, and really that game one walk-off grand slam. I mean, just absolutely killed it, knew it. The bat drop and everything. It was a pretty electric moment. But yeah, man, like outside of that, game two, game three, whatever, Yankees finally put something together, game four. And you know, get the win there. But I think the other big talking point in this series is the game five. And I think this is going to haunt Yankees fans for a long time with that 5-0 lead and that top of the fifth inning. I mean, it's just inexcusable. And John, I mean,
How
what
do you
are
leave your starter in there? How do you leave
I
him in
don't,
there?
but
I
it's
understand
not.
it's Garrett Cole,
But
but it's
is
the
it even? Well,
series.
the last play is his fault, right? Or you know the one where he doesn't cover first. But like, what are we doing, guys? Like Judge dropping an easy fly ball, Volpe the play at third. Like it's just plays that can't happen, and you just know stuff like this is possible when you allow a team like the Dodgers to get extra chances in an inning. They're gonna hurt you, and they tied up the game there. So like, I don't know. To me, it felt like after that, the Yankees were holding on for dear life, but it just wasn't enough. Any thoughts on that? I mean, Will, I'll go to you first, I guess, on this. I mean, just inexcusable and can't happen.
Yeah, they absolutely gave away that game. And I mean, there wasn't anyone I think that truly thought the Yankees would win this series after being down 3-0. But I mean, they had the routine fly ball that Judge dropped. A little less routine on the Volpe situation with the ground ball to his right side, but he threw it to third, which is the right move. But I mean, maybe a better third baseman, or at least I should say an actual third baseman, might have had that pick. Volpe, if he took the fraction of a second longer and didn't spike it, could have gotten me out. But the Cole not going to first base was the dagger, and that was kind of the summary of the Yankees as a whole throughout. Probably not just the postseason, but the regular season, in the sense that they get the big bats that can come through for them when they needed to, but they weren't always a sound team at times, especially defensively. And at the end there, when they're literally at a game that could have meant they were going home, even though they were up 5-0, they let their guard down way too much. And the Dodgers kept chipping away as they always did throughout the entire series. Even in the blowout game in game four, the Dodgers were only down by like 2 or 3 runs going into the eighth inning. They were still fighting until the Yankees blew it away. And so that's going to be the thing that the Yankees look back on is what could they do in the future to make sure that they can stay strong fundamentally throughout the season and into the postseason, because you cannot have something like that in the fifth inning determine how your season ends.
Well,
That,
here's my question: Is that come down to accountability in terms of the Yankees? Like, is their manager Aaron Boone, is he holding them accountable
Well,
for
at that
these
point,
issues?
it's so many accountability is always the thing where that tends to be more of an argument to me when you have individual things that slowly pop up throughout the season, and then someone you hold accountable, yeah, for what they did and making sure they don't do it again. When everything falls apart like that, then that's just a team wide thing lacking focus or putting too much pressure on themselves or whatever. I mean, I would say the moment just got a little too much for them, maybe at times. I think Judge was just too lackadaisical on the fly ball. Did he lose it in the light maybe for a second? Probably not. It looked like more like he was looking at the runner. The Volpe uh, ground ball and then throwing to third was a bit more of just in the heat of the moment. Is probably the one that is half understandable from a team that at
yeah.
times is a little shaky defensively. And then Cole was more of he probably got a little eager that this was the ground ball that's going to do it. The second he didn't field it, it was kind of like, yeah, we got this now. Looked over and was like, ah, shit.
I mean that ball had some weird backspin. Because that was with two outs, right? Yeah, because he
Yeah.
went bases loaded, strikeout, strikeout. That play, I think it was. And I think it's probably what it was. It was an adrenaline thing where he sees this ball get hit. The backspin was kind of weird, so like it kind of rolled a little too slow to Rizzo. And I think it was too late when he realized, oh, I got to cover this bag.
But he didn't break that way. He broke 90 right at the line.
Yeah.
So
there's
once he
also-
chose that, he was done
Yeah.
for.
Well, there's also Mookie Betts is sprinting as fast
Yeah.
as he can down the field or down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
but with the
got
pitcher
a-
situation
he
too, if you don't even break towards the base, you break it all to the line. You have to do a full redirect
Yeah.
to try to make it to the base. So there was absolutely no way he was going to make it anyway. He, I think, was just full on not realizing how hard or how the ball was hit, and was like, Rizzo's going to be like X feet away from the bag. He's got it. When Rizzo kind of took a step back and took it on the hop.
And I think it's easy for us to say from, a viewing standpoint of, okay, that's a play that can happen. But I think you're probably right, Will, in the sense that, there was adrenaline there. It was a big moment. He finally gets a ground ball. They get out of that inning. There's a good chance they take game 2, send it back to LA. With a 5-run lead going into what would be the top, or at least a 5-run lead going into the top of the 6th. And, it just can't happen. And man, like when this stuff happens, it was I think it was the playing game with Edwin Diaz when he didn't cover the bag. And then the next batter comes up and like hits a home run, I think, and the Braves took lead. And eventually the Mets did end up winning that game. But whenever it happens, whenever like the pitcher makes a mistake like that where they're not covering the bag, something happens, the next batter comes up and they always deliver. And you just kind of knew it was going to happen. And I really think from that point on, the Yankees were kind of, I mean, they were shook after that. They do take the lead again in the next inning. But it was the Dodgers again just shipping away, getting those base runners on, and eventually just too much for the Yankees. But
I think even with the Yankees getting that last run for them, the Dodgers had the momentum. And honestly, in baseball, throughout a game, throughout a series, like especially in the playoffs, you can feel the momentum, and when it's for the other team and when it's for your team, and it's just a scary thing,
yeah. And it took the air out of the building, obviously. I think that I really did believe before that 5th inning, I was like, I know a reverse sweep is just it sounds impossible, especially going back to LA. But like you kind of felt like even like the New York fans were still kind of like hyped after that game 4 win. And then going into that game 5 with that lead early, they were like really bringing the energy. It's like, okay, man, like they feel like they're not a team that's down 3-0, 3-1 right now. And I could legit see them going to 7 and at least with this series. But once you have that happen, that breakdown, breakdown of an inning, there was just no coming back from that. Excuse me. Somebody else
think
to talk.
I think that the Dodgers are also lucky that things kind of played out the way they did, because throughout game 5, when it was still really close, Dave Roberts was deploying absolutely everyone. And I mean, even going into that 9th inning where it ended up being Walker Buehler, there was a lot of questions on who was left, if anyone, in that bullpen. And if the team lost and was going to have to go back to LA, sure, you were going to have the day off, so there was going to be some rest for pitchers. But at this point, you were going to have used a lot of those guys throughout the first 5 games of the series. They were going to be tired, being that at this point they played like 180 plus games this season if you count everything. And they would have really been exposed to the Yankees offense that was suddenly turning around slightly. So if the Yankees had been able to hold on to that game like any competent team should have, then it really could have gone to it. I think game 6 would have been much more up in the air, and you could have seen a game 7.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to ask this question, and I don't, as you said earlier, Will, like with Boone, I don't think there's really much you can do about like the errors as they happen. But do you think Dave Roberts outmanaged Boone the series? I mean, because we kind of give both managers a lot of shit, and rightfully so at times. But like Dave Roberts outmanaging somebody is kind of just wild to me because it just feels like that never happens.
This is what happens when you have Dumb and Dumber managing against one another.
I was about to say that's not a hard.
But yes, I do think
Dave
Roberts. I think Dave Roberts pushed about every button he could correctly. Sure, there were instances where he deployed a lot of guys maybe early on, or Even coming into the series, there were questions at times about times he did not deploy certain pitchers and situations because he was holding off on using guys later in the series if need be. It worked out. This series, he kind of flipped that. He started using his big guns earlier to try to get games. And there were some questions about whether then that would be issues later on, but they solidified all the wins that they needed to. They need to send it back to LA. I mean, I don't think Boone really did anything wrong per se, other than the questions in game one. I just think that all the pitching moves Roberts did in the end were right in the moment and enough to counteract the Yankees offense, which was struggling. And that even when it was getting better, was still able to keep him enough in check.
Yeah, and that's a point where I feel like for years there was a lot of questions with Roberts about his decisions with pitchers and stuff like that. But I mean, you got to give him credit because in this game five, I mean, Flaherty gets shelled early, who had been their best pitcher since really acquiring him, and he was able to put a formula
Boy, he had
together.
weird playoffs.
Yeah, he did. He did have a weird playoffs. I
You
do
gotta
have.
give Dave Robert. Or you gotta give Dave Roberts credit of
I'm not giving him credit now.
I gotta give him some credit here. We realize he did win, and they did come back from.
Apparently,
5-0.
everything I just said was negativity.
Yeah. You got to give him credit in the sense of knowing that, hey, my starter doesn't have it today. Yeah, he might be my best guy, but we need to close this out. Like this is not, we'll fix it out. We'll fix this tomorrow sort of deal that a lot of managers play with.
Do you think he potentially learned a little lesson from that game 5 versus the Mets? Because that's the last time Flaherty pitched. He also did not have his stuff. He pitched arguably a little longer than people thought he would. And his comments after the game kind of came across as, that was a game that I wasn't really managing to win because I wanted to save my guys for the back end of that series. Do you think that he completely changed that game plan because of whether backlash or just how things played out in that game? Or do you think now that it was the World Series, his mindset was a little different and more of that, I could win this today if I keep it close enough. And so that's what he did.
I think it's exactly that. He realized I can win this today. We have the momentum. They don't have the momentum fully. Let's slam the door here. Let's not leave it a crack open for them to somehow make a fluke reverse sweep and take the series from us. It would have been entertaining, but as an Orioles fan, I love seeing the Yankees lose.
I think, yeah, there's probably some of that of, okay, we need to try to win today because, it really in all sports, not just baseball, but like teams that have that 3-0 lead, obviously, we don't see it often where a reverse sweep a reverse sweep happens. But if the other team wins that game 5, there's a lot of momentum they have going into that game 6. If they win that game 6, anything can happen in a game 7. So I do feel like even though you have that 3-0 lead, you really want to put it away like before game 6. And I think he really said, look, we keep this close. Obviously, we're a team that can hit home runs. We can get, massive innings. We're going to keep this close. And he did. And I do think he probably learned something because when he made those comments after that game 5 versus the Mets, there was like kind of a tilt of the head from some people about it. But I do think he probably learned something about it and really went all out, and it works, man. I mean, Walker Buehler comes in, and closes out the game, and Treinen throws 42 pitches. I mean, they really gave it all they could, and it was enough in the end. I do have 2 questions related to the Yankees, which is going to get Yankees fans all up in a stir.
I'll answer that then, so that John doesn't get bashed by Yankees fans.
I'm sure about it. We had talked about really coming into this postseason that it felt like the AL was wide open. In the NL, you had your Phillies, we thought. You had your Dodgers, your Padres potentially. But in the AL, it was a lot more up in the air. Do you feel like the Yankees, I don't want to say had an easy path because I do believe the Guardians team was good, but it felt like the way they played in the series versus the Dodgers, they severely were really overmatched. Like it's they kept the games close, but it just wasn't what we had seen from them. And I don't know, is there a little bit of, hey, the AL was kind of weaker than the NL, and this is why the Yankees were here?
I absolutely think in general the AL was weaker than the NL. I think you kind of stated that anyway with the way you were saying that there were a lot of teams in the National League that it seemed like people would favor in the long run in the playoffs. Of the paths that could have happened, I do think this was probably the hardest, actually. I'm just going to flat out. Yeah, I don't think there was really anyone else in the playoffs this year in the AL the way that everyone was performing when you look at it that I think would have been better than the Yankees. I think when you can talk about what's on paper and what people did maybe in the regular season and say, like, the Orioles at times, especially late in the season, really had the Yankees number, or the Astros have a lot of experience and yada, yada, yada. But just based on how everyone looked in the postseason, I mean, I think the only team that had a shot to really dethrone the Yankees were the Guardians. And at times they would fight, but in the end, the Yankees offense was good enough. And I should say their offense was good and their pitching was good enough, stepping up when it needed to in the postseason as the question mark. And ultimately, they were able to outslug a good Guardians bullpen. I don't think in the end, if you really switched it up, the combinations, it would have changed drastically how things ended up.
Yeah, and look, I say this because I think with the Royals or Orioles series, whoever they were going to end up playing, I know the Orioles would have been an interdivision matchup, but it was two teams that were coming in reeling. You had the Guardians, who I think were again a favorite, not a favorite, but a contender in the AL. But even I think they like kind of shattered expectations at some point too. Like, did we think, excuse me, that they were going to get into the ALCS this year? According to our predictions, we definitely didn't. So,
Except for you.
um,
Actually, we all thought they were
no,
in the ALCS right now once we get
yeah,
to our postseason brackets.
right. But yeah, man, I don't know. Like, I don't want to take away from what the Yankees did, but it just felt like the Dodgers were more battle tested for this one, and ultimately come out on top. John, anything to add to this?
Honestly, when it comes down to it, I think statistically, the edge went to the Yankees, so this doesn't really, help. It doesn't really make sense in terms of the math and everything. The Yankees, I think, batted. I know the Dodgers batted 206. I think the Yankees. I forget what they batted. Hold on, let me
Worse.
grab that. No, they didn't.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
were batting two 212. Big difference.
Yeah.
And then pitching, it was the same thing. Like the Dodgers ERA is over 4, the Yankees ERA is like 330 something. It
That's
was
because of
coming
game
into
4.
this.
That's a little skewed.
Yeah.
Either way, you got to look at it like this. The
Skews a little blow.
Yankees
Blowout skewed it.
the the Yankees could have beaten anyone on paper, yet we saw them struggle to even make the simplest plays. So when you're not a fundamentally sound team, you're going to really struggle, especially in the postseason. And the Yankees struggled when it mattered most.
The other question I'll ask, and I think we've answered this at some points, and I don't want to get too much into the Soto talk because I do want to save that for, free agency when we talk about that. Does this model that the Yankees kind of have with their lineup, will it ever work for them? I mean, you have Judge. Let's say they resign Soto.
Only if they have 3 superstars working at the same time.
Here's
Yeah,
my
I
here's
think
my
this was their best
question.
chance.
Here's my question. Stanton, right? Like,
Mhm.
I he had his moments, whatever, in the regular season, this and that. He was really good for them. He was arguably their best player in the postseason, honestly.
Mhm.
And that's great and all, but he is kind of a liability if he doesn't hit a home run, right? He's a guy that can only play DH. This is a lineup that obviously is very heavily stacked with power hitters. And if they, are not performing to the level that they need to, it just seems like this team is just so many steps behind. So does this model work for them? Like, I feel like I'm hearing a lot from Yankees fans about, we need more guys that can just get on base. We need more guys that, that it's not home run or bust. I think sometimes that's a little over dramatic, but like, well, I'll, you can answer this question first. Do you think this model will work for them if it didn't work for them this year?
I think that with the right matchups, it could work. The Yankees situation this postseason and really reflecting them against the Dodgers is that they were definitely living off of their big guns. And in this case, their big guns were Soto and Stanton. They really were not hitting well with runners in scoring position throughout the postseason. It wasn't just the World Series. And as we've said time and time again, Aaron Judge was not Aaron Judge until games 4 and 5 of the World Series, which is just far too late to really do anything, especially because at that point the team was down 3 games to nothing and then 3 games to 1. This model, though, got them to where they are. That so it's hard to say that it wouldn't work. And we did see what happened later in the series when suddenly Volpe was hitting again, when guys were getting on base after seeing pitchers for a lot of the time and we're starting to walk. I think that the Yankees can do it, but they have to take what worked well for them offensively later in the postseason and now kind of use that as the building blocks to in 2025 try to pursue that mentality at the plate throughout the season so that into the postseason it becomes second nature to them. Because if they're just going to be complacent with where some of the hitters were outside of their superstars and be like, all right, we'll just bring in 1 or 2 superstars. Yes, you can get to where you were, but if you face a team that is better than you, especially pitching wise, they will be able to work around that very lopsided lineup. And then this postseason, at least I should say going into the postseason, I think you could have had 4, if not 5 National League teams pitch around the Yankees effectively.
Yeah, and that was always the thing we talked about. It was the pitching around. But yeah, I think having guys like Soto and Judge, obviously they're both top 5 hitters in the entire world. I think they can carry you, but it just excuse me, trying to hold it together here. Feels like, sometimes they rely on them too much. We talked about in the regular season about that. John, what is your take on this?
I want to go back to your comment of it, if you haven't, like, you have to get into a rhythm here or whatever it was. After 180 games, if you haven't figured it out, are you really ever going to figure it out? Honestly, and that's what I come back to. This lineup really had, it was very top heavy. Let's put it that way. In the regular season, you had Judge and Soto. You weren't really afraid of Stanton. You just had to throw it low and away, and he would chase after it. Everybody else was just kind of guys. And then Stanton picked it up, in the postseason. Judge fell off a cliff and, burst into flames, and then Soto was Soto. So you got to look at it like that. Outside of them, I wasn't really afraid of anyone in terms of, they were beatable. This wasn't, the early 2000s Yankees here. So when it comes down to it, in my opinion, this method of big guys win championships, I don't think that it's a method that works, honestly.
It's not consistent work, but yeah, I mean, the 162 games in the end is where you would need to build your framework and kind of how you attack and play your games. And then the postseason is how well can you adapt, because that's when you're going to face teams that are going to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and they're going to go 110% towards your weaknesses. And it's if you can make the adjustments at the plate to counteract those attacks, whether it's chasing a ball or they want you to hit a high pitch where you're a low ball hitter. You got to make the right adjustments and you got to be patient. And I think in the end, this postseason, the teams that came out on top in the end were the teams that were just far more patient.
Yeah, and look, I like I said, I like what Stanton did this postseason. It feels like
But
he's
he's
kind
always
of
been a good postseason hitter. That's
he
the thing.
has my
He's been a
point.
power postseason hitter, so
Yeah, my point to this like model thing is that when you have guy, and I know Soto's more than just a home run guy, he's an on base guy for sure. But when
but
you
he's a
have
$700 million on base guy.
Yes, he is. But when you have those three guys or those two guys and then Stanton and he can't play the field, it's like where does he fit in here? Like does he fit in? It's interesting. So like he's gonna be on the team. He's still got 3 years left on his deal.
And nobody's gonna pay that contract for
But
DH.
that's the thing though, and I don't think they will, but this upcoming season, and I know I'm getting way ahead here. This upcoming season, he still had 32. In 2026, he drops down to 19, and then the year after 15 per. So does he eventually get moved out? I'm not really sure. But I think again, what he did in this postseason, if they can get that consistently with him, that'd be great. It's just
You're not going to.
that's the issue. Yeah. So the Yankees, I think your first order of business obviously is getting, I don't care what it takes. If it takes $2 billion, you back that Brinks truck up, you sign Soto, you do whatever it takes. I think he wants to be there. I do ultimately think that's where he ends up, but
I don't think so. I think he ends up across the city in
across the
Queens.
city.
You
Oh,
think the
God.
Mets are going to get him?
No,
I do.
the fuck, he will not.
I do.
No.
I do
Uh,
think that he ends up in Queens.
I do think the Mets will make a push. At the moment, my hunch is that because the Yankees lost the World Series, they're going to do everything in their power to keep him there. And the only thing that wouldn't keep him there is that he doesn't want to play there. But I think they will absolutely unload whatever that he wants money wise.
Well, that would
Yeah,
be stupid of him to not want to play there. I mean, let's be honest.
that's what I'm saying, man. Dude,
Eh,
I don't care if it takes $2 billion. That's what it takes. Like you have to resign him. He's a top three hitter on baseball, and I say this every time we talk about him. He's still young. Like it's crazy. He's been around forever. He's still young. He's got experience now,
I
and
think he's going to get that 14-year deal.
yeah,
There's been talks about whether he would get that because of whether or not he could get the 700 million and what that would mean annually, because he would get on average 50 million for a 14-year deal. I think he gets 14. I think it's even possible he gets 15.
yeah,
I mean, he's that type of a hitter where one, he is that good for the next 10 years, and then he's still going to have a great approach after that. So I think he's going to get a 14 or $15 million deal, and he's going to beat Otani, believe it or not.
I mean, look, he's 26.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, like I said, that means he's beating 50 million on a year on average is the thing. The Otani thing is 10 years at 700 million, of course, with the deferrals and luxury tax. Technically, like what it qualifies as, it's completely different. But to say
think
that
would reset
Soto
the
is going to,
market.
but to get
That's the
Soto
thing.
is going to get more than 50 million a year per on average, yes, I think that is absolutely possible, and I think therefore a team will push the years, and because of that, he'll break Otani.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
will say this: if that's the case, then he's definitely not going to be a Yankee because the Yankees are pretty smart when it comes to big signings like that.
No, they're not. Let's be honest. We've
They
been
are.
bullshitting them
They're
over the
better
last 3-4 years because they make
on,
the
hold
signing
on.
for that one big. No, you shut up. I'm talking. I'll mute
How
you if I
shut
have
up?
to.
I'm talking.
The Yankees are
talking.
absolutely the team where over recent years they will spend the big bucks to get the one guy, and then we just complain about them about why are you spending the money on the one guy when you need to build the army around them. And so they are absolutely the team that will put the money on the Soto.
There is a team across town that spends stupid money worse, and that is the New York Mets.
They do spend it worse because they spent a lot of money a year or two ago and it did not work out well. So definitely worse.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I will say 15-year deal takes him to 41, and with these contracts now, like you can cut that down for the last
That's
3 years.
highly possible.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like I do think a 15-year deal is absolutely possible.
I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see a 20-year-old get a 20-year deal.
And by the way, he just turned 26 like a week ago. So
can we all agree that a 20-year deal is
20.
we're at the line, right?
there's
20-year
gonna be a
deal.
point the way things are trending in the
That's what Will just
before
said.
2040.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Before 2040,
Yeah,
the way
okay.
things are trending, I absolutely think there's going to be that young guy that a team is like, all right, here's 20 years at 400 million or whatever.
Paul Skeens.
And then he's gonna tear his ACL and never be able to play baseball again.
I thought you were talking about
guaranteed money.
I thought you were talking about a 20-year contract for Soto. I'm like,
No. I was
Yeah.
thinking in my head 20-year deal. I'm like, we have to be like at the peak, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
don't know
until
about
we
that.
start figuring out how to put brains in robot bodies, like to extend careers to like 100 or something. I don't think we get any higher than that, right?
Probably not.
Probably not much higher than
That's
15,
how Ted Williams
really,
makes
but-
his comeback.
I mean, I listen. Someone's got to do it.
Overall,
Someone's got to get his
congrats.
head out of the freezer.
Ted Williams finally wins a World Series in the year 2050 with the Boston Red Sox.
Overall, congrats. I know John won't tell you, but congrats to the Dodgers. And now this goes back to the video.
Hold on. Congrats to the Dodgers. You did what you should do. Congratulations. You got to win
Correct.
3 more for this to be worth it.
No, wait. Something
According
we
to
haven't
us.
said yet. We had this whole conversation about how many World Series is it going to be. That's one. That's one.
Yeah, that's one.
That's what I was just.
I
gotta
said
win
they would
3
win
more.
one.
I was
This
just
is their
about
one.
I was just about to reference it. I think it was our second video we ever did for baseball, at least, or the second show we ever did for baseball was talking about that. And they got the first one early, so the sky's the limit for them. I think they're going to be the other. It's going to be the Yankees.
As long as they have a Will Smith, they have a way.
Exactly, and he'll be there.
And Otani's pitching next
and
year.
Ohtani and a Freeman.
Yeah, man, that's
and-
crazy.
No, come on.
Bats.
No. Since 2020, a Will Smith has been on the World Series team every year. Dodgers had catcher Will Smith, then it was pitcher Will Smith for the next 3 years, and now it's back to the catcher. Where there's a will, there's a way.
This is where like the Pirates sign actor Will Smith because they're too cheap.
No, I've already said the Phillies need to sign pitcher Will Smith, have him pitch only in blowouts, and then they'll win the World Series next year. So that needs to be everyone's plan.
Look, actor Will Smith has made enough money in his career. Sign him to like a league minimum, put him on the bench, never play him, but he's on the roster.
Hey,
By the
we know
way,
he can
double
hit.
points for the guy replying to Will Smith smacking Chris Rock in the replies.
I was about
for
to
this
say,
podcast.
we know he can hit.
Yeah, he can hit. He can absolutely hit.
Let's expand the rosters to 30, and then let's see about that happening.
I have
Let's
a feeling
see, Chris
that
Rock's
is
head was
closer down
about
the pipeline than you think.
Let's see, Chris Rock's head was about at the letters for Will Smith when he was standing up against him. So any ball that's like middle up is going to be gone in Will Smith's batter's box. That's the way I look at it.
He's not even gonna need a bat. He's just gonna take it with his hand.
God.
Righty bat.
Christ.